And so really emotional intelligence piqued my interest because that's such a huge part of leadership. It's leadership. You're leading people, you're serving people. And if we don't have emotional intelligence, I learned that we can't truly do that to the best of our abilities.
Hi there. Welcome back to the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast. I'm Ryan Franklin, and I would love for you to join me every week as we explore leadership topics that will help you get the clarity needed to move your church or organization forward. Just hit the subscribe button and the bell to get notified as soon as I post a new session. And before we get started, I do want to mention that I have a great product called the Christian Leader Blueprint. It's a solid model for leadership development to help you establish a better rhythm of life, to see yourself more clearly, to leverage your strengths, and to build more productive relationships. And I want to give it to you as my free gift. You can go to ryanfranklin.org and download it, the short guide, for free today. And without any further delay, let's get to our session. I'm excited today to have on the podcast a very good friend of mine, DJ Hill. And I want to start off by telling you a little bit about DJ. DJ has served the Georgia District Youth Ministries for 5 years, serving as the Georgia District Promotions Director. He has served as the evangelism pastor at Atlanta West Pentecostal Church with Pastor Daryl Johns in Georgia. And he has served the past 2 years and is currently serving as the National Promotions Director in St. Louis, Missouri. And he has been very versatile most of his life and hands-on in ministry by ministering in youth rallies, classrooms, children's church, revivals, outreach opportunities, youth camps, personal Bible studies, leadership training, and I could probably list a whole lot more, but I'll stop there.
Thank you.
He graduated from Urshan College with a Bachelor of Arts in Christian Ministry with a pastoral ministry concentration, and from Urshan Graduate School of Theology with a Master of Theological Studies. He's been married to his wife, Natalie, for 4 years, and they have 2 beautiful daughters, Kylela and Ira. And so with that said, DJ, welcome to the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast.
Man, it's so awesome to be a guest today. I followed you for months, and I do reciprocate that friendship. Man, I love you, Ryan, and appreciate your influence and voice in my life. It's an honor to be here today.
Thank you, DJ. You're a tremendous person to be connected with, and it is my honor to have you on here. So our subject today is emotional intelligence. This is a subject that you and I have talked about, just in casual conversation quite a bit, and it's a subject that I love to talk about. Mm-hmm. But I want you to talk about it today, and so I've asked you to come on, and I want to interview you about it. But I want you to start off, if you can just tell us a little bit about you. I know I've said a lot already in your bio, but just tell us a little bit about you and what has sparked your interest in emotional intelligence.
Yeah, well, I grew up a military kid, and then around the age of 16, I went to a youth camp where Brother Luke Levine was preaching, and it forever changed my life. At that camp, I felt a call to ministry. It wasn't necessarily to pulpit ministry, and when I went back home, my pastor told me, if you feel a call, then show me ministry. Just go and serve. So I started just getting involved in everything, handing out stale animal crackers in Sunday school, taking out the trash, doing maintenance, doing all these things. And eventually, long story short, it eventually led to Urshan College, where I felt a greater calling to not just serve, but also to preach. And so I knew this heartbeat to go and pastor, to preach, to serve, to love people, to help people, to build people. And so ever since then, really, I just felt the need to just be the best leader that I can be, to just do whatever I can do to be the best version of me, whether that was school, whether that was graduate school, reading books, listening to podcasts, surrounding myself with great mentors and friends and leaders, just serving in all different opportunities so I can just, have a circumspect opportunity in leadership and ministry. And so really emotional intelligence piqued my interest because that's such a huge part of leadership. It's leadership. You're leading people, you're serving people. And if we don't have emotional intelligence, I learned that we can't truly do that to the best of our abilities. That's such a great tool in the toolbox of a leader, to have emotional intelligence. And that really is going to take them the next step. It's kind of that old adage, but it's still true. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And emotional intelligence allows you to learn to self-care and to care for others more.
Yeah, that's very good. And it is a very powerful tool. I will reiterate that it is a very powerful tool. But what actually is emotional intelligence? How would you describe it in whatever words you'd like to use?
So before I give the definition, really it makes all the difference if you have it or not. You can tell if a leader is emotionally intelligent or not, because it just takes them to the next level. How I would define it is, I would use John Townsend's book, People Fuel. In that book, his premise really is relational nutrients. And just like relational nutrients, that we have physical needs. We need water, we need air, we need food, the supplements and vitamins that we get from food, protein, all of that stuff. The same is true for relational nutrients. If you and I go without water for a few days, that would greatly hinder our physical bodies. If we go without food for an extended period of time, without God's help and fasting, that could greatly hurt our body. Same thing without air. So if we take that physical diet or physical nutrients and we take it over to relational nutrients, then that really is what emotional intelligence is all about. It's being able to realize that a certain part of my relational diet is in need, whether that I need more vitamin D, I need more vitamin C, I need more zinc, more calcium, whatever it is. Just like our physical bodies, we have relational needs. Even at the beginning of time, Brother Ryan, God said it's not good for the man to be alone. Yes, it was in a marital relationship, but all throughout time, God understood that we need each other. We're fitly framed together. We're the body of Christ. He even sent his disciples out 2 by 2 because he realized that we are better together. And so it's a biblical principle. Yeah. And I think that's what emotional intelligence is all about, is being able to know that you have certain relational needs and emotional needs, and that you get those from other people, whether that is affirmation, whether that's encouragement, whether that's perspective. You might feel, man, this person said this and it really hurt my feelings, or I didn't appreciate the way they said this, but then someone gives a different perspective and it helps you to realize, man, that is not, I didn't understand that or interpret that the right way. So emotional intelligence is all about that. And just
I didn't realize, DJ, if you don't mind me cutting in here.
Go ahead. I
didn't realize you were going to jump so deep so quick.
Yeah.
because that at its core, when we're understanding our emotions and emotional intelligence, a lot of even, well, whether it be negative or positive, the fruit that we see, the emotions that we see, when you really drill down to it, it's going to be the relational soil that in our life that causes that, and that's what those relational nutrients are. Are they good or are they lacking?
That's good,
and it can really impact the what we present, the fruit that we present on the outside. So, pardon me for cutting you off.
No, that's good. That's a great point. Yeah, and that soil really does matter, to your point, because if we're lacking those nutrients, it will show. We won't be the leader, to what we talked about earlier. That makes all the difference that we can be. If we aren't aware of ourselves and the things that we need, we're going to lack something, and it's going to show itself or manifest in different ways for sure.
Yeah. So anything else on what emotional intelligence is in regards to?
I would say one of the big things I had to learn, Ryan, was that we're all different. Just like physically, we all have different needs. Some people, they are gluten intolerant, or they need to be gluten-free or lactose intolerant. Doing AYC missions trips here at Youth Ministries, you see the list of students that you might engage with at camps or on missions trips or at Real McCoy weekend, and different dietary needs that they have. And so you might need something more or less than what I need, or I might need something more or less than what you need. And I have to be understanding of that we, just like in physical diets, we have different emotional dietary needs as well.
Yeah, very, very much so. So with that, with you saying that, what difference has it made in your life? What has emotional intelligence done for you to pay attention to your diet, your relational needs, etc.? What has that done to your emotional intelligence and you being able to pay attention to that, to feed it properly, to understand what's going on in you? How's that impacted your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. I want to take your illustration of the fruit tree. We can use the apple tree, for instance, Ryan. And there's been times in my life in leadership in different roles that I've been able to serve in where I realize something's missing. I'm not doing good, or I might be a little quick-tempered or doubtful or cynical, or something's going on. Something's in the soil, to what you said, and I'm not producing what God has called me to produce or what He's gifted me to produce, the talents that He's given me. I'm not multiplying those like what we're created to do. And so I've really had to learn when there's something wrong with the soil, just like in diet, I have to go and figure out what that is. And so how does that impact how I manage myself? It's allowed me to be able to stop in a moment when I feel like the fruit isn't growing, it's not producing, or something's wrong, and go and kind of do an emotional physical, if you would, where I test and say, what is going on? What's lacking? What do I need more of in that moment?
So can you help me understand in the moment, what is like an emotion that you may feel, like anxiety or stress? What do you mean by in the moment?
That's a good question. So let's get real practical and make it real life. Let's say you're preparing for an event, and you're over a certain aspect of the event. Let's go local church. You're going to have a big family and friends weekend or outreach weekend, and you're over the guest relations, and you're supposed to supply the food, and you're doing your best to try to grow the ministry and do the best way you can to connect with guests. But then, in the moment you're frustrated, or in the moment you don't feel the motivation when you get up before the weekend, and you're like, man, I'm so excited for the kingdom to come, for God to do something through me. Or in the moment you're wanting to quit, or you're egotistical, you're making it all about you, or you're lashing out, or you're being moody, or whatever those things are. In those moments, that's the moment I'm talking about, when in the highs and in the lows, when you're able to test yourself and say, am I trying to get the credit? Am I being an egotistical, or am I treating people harshly or wrongly by being hyper moody? Am I not being a team player by listening to what other people are saying or what they need? Am I trying to just close off and do it all myself and just buckle down and be like a bull in a china shop? I think we all, as Christian leaders, have those moments where stress or stuff, the environment's going on around us, and we feel like we're not getting what we need. And it always shows itself in different ways. As you said, it can be in anger, it can be in being recluse, it can be in lashing out. There's all kind of different ways that can manifest, for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. So with that said, and you use the example of somebody doing an event or whatever, and they're responsible for something. Let's take that maybe even a notch up,
Okay.
and take it to maybe leading in a team of people or whatever. Why do you think that EQ is so vital to a leader's success today? Because nobody talked about this stuff a few years ago.
No.
Now it seems like everybody's talking about EQ, which EQ, by the way, is for the listeners is emotional intelligence. EQ, some people call it EQ or EI. I generally just say EQ for short. But why do you think it's so vital to leadership, to the success of leaders today?
I would continue that illustration of the fruit tree, because as whatever you're producing, if a tree is poisoned, it can get down into the soil and spread to other trees. And so why that matters is because the people that you serve with or you're putting the event on with, it could wound them. If you're feeling the stress and you're not getting what you need emotionally, your relational nutrients, in the heat of a moment or in the high point of a stress moment, you could say something that could really alter them. If you and we look back at different things, how many people were told something as a young person that has changed the way they view themselves? And we could be that same person that's irrationally, because of what we're lacking, go and hurt people. And so why that matters is because when you deal with people, you have to know what's inside of you and what you're struggling with, what's going on within you, because whatever's going on within you, you're going to then give that out. You're going to project that or portray that.
You're going to pass that to the next person. You're going to create the culture of whatever environment that you're serving over.
Yep.
You're going to create the culture by your emotion. Your emotion is going to be contagious.
Yep. And that matters back to why this was even important, and what kind of made me to it. That first question we discussed is, for me to be the best leader I can be, I have to know that, because I could easily go on to pastor and I have this lack of relational nutrients here and bitterness, whether it's from a bad relationship or I don't have a good friends around me or whatever I'm lacking. And then that culture gets created within the people I lead. Can you imagine a whole church that's just mean and bitter because there's no encouragement or no affirmation? The soil is so hard and nothing can take root there, and they just lash out on everybody and anybody. Anything wrong that anybody does, immediately fingers start to get pointed and everyone starts to get attacked. That's not a good environment for people to grow in Christ, and that's going to come from the leadership and what they're doing and what they're missing, and if they're getting those relational nutrients or not.
Yeah, and if you don't mind me pointing out, DJ, when let's take that you're talking about an extreme leadership issue that's contagious, it's toxic to an environment. But what about the leader that is mostly good, mostly positive, but when they're tired and stressed, that's when, and they're not getting what they need when they're tired and stressed emotionally, and that's when the worst of them comes out. And it doesn't affect you maybe that day in that moment, but when you start having those negative emotions come out occasionally, but often over time, it builds and builds. And so it's sort of like, one little instance is not going to tear your leadership up or destroy the culture of the church or the environment that you serve in. Yeah. But over time, it can erode those relationships and just sort of deteriorate to where where people don't respect you anymore. Would you agree with that?
No, I agree. It's I heard one leadership principle. It's like landmines, where maybe you can get away with stepping on it a couple times in the war zone and like, okay, I don't need to walk that way, or but after enough landmines, you're going to learn, okay, I don't even want to walk there. I don't want to be relationally close to that person. I don't want to serve under that person. I don't want to be a part of the same mission as them because of those landmines. And the whole ground isn't landmines, but it only takes a few times, as you said, for a leader in that moment of stress to act out because of what they're lacking, for people around them to start to realize, something's not right. And then it's going to create that unhealthy culture. And more than just culture, it's going to create unhealthy relationships where people don't want to interact with you, interact back and forth. And then it honestly creates a cycle, because as they step on those landmines, they start to avoid you, which means they're probably not giving you what you need. And then means you're creating more landmines. And it's this horrible spiral down effect of where you're constantly not getting what you need because you're not giving to others, and others are stepping on landmines because you're high stress. And it's, no leader wants to be there. And if you're aware, you're able to go out to the land because you know where the landmines are. You're able to dig those up so that your leadership, and when people follow you, it's good ground where they're not worried about getting blown up or stuff coming their way. They don't have PTSD, that kind of illustration. Yeah. They don't have that because they've walked on good ground with you.
Well, and what comes to my mind right now is trust.
Yeah.
Good emotionally intelligent people, it facilitates trust. It gains trust.
Yep.
But when you're not aware of what's going on inside of you, and it's sort of, and maybe during the negative times, it sort of leaks out to the people around you. It erodes trust.
Yep.
And there's very little leadership, very little influence that's going to be productive when you don't have trust.
That's good. Yep. Yeah.
So
it's trust is everything in that. And you can't trust somebody that's constantly wounding you in those stressful moments.
That's true. Very true. So I want to give you my definition of emotional intelligence, and then walk through. There's 4 components to the definition that I've settled on personally. Mm-hmm. And if you don't mind, I'd like to walk through those 4 components and just ask you some questions about those 4 components.
Yeah.
So here's my definition. From an emotional standpoint, emotional intelligence is about being able to understand yourself, mm-hmm. to manage yourself, to understand others, and manage your behavior towards others.
It's good.
Simple, but 4 concepts. Understand yourself, manage yourself, understand others, and manage your behavior towards others. Mm-hmm. So let's jump into that understanding yourself. Tell me what that means to you.
So really just being self-aware, which I would say that's synonymous, but understanding yourself is knowing what you need, knowing who you are, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, not being a blind leader about what you're capable of, how you're feeling, what you're thinking, your personality, your emotional energy, your relational energy. If you feel like, man, I'm an introvert, I need to kind of recoup and get away from people. I think that's all about understanding yourself.
So even knowing your strengths, even knowing your weaknesses is important to emotional intelligence. I mean, We're talking about emotions here.
Yeah.
But why would you think that understanding your strengths and weaknesses, like what you're good at, like I may be good at organization, mm-hmm. but I may really struggle to get in front of a crowd or something. Yeah. It just drains the life out of me. Why would that be important to understand that?
Because in order for you to be fulfilled and fulfill the calling that God has on our lives as a Christian leader, we have to know our strengths, because we can't operate mm-hmm. in our weaknesses. For instance, I know I can't sing, though I love music, Ryan. I know you haven't heard me sing a lot, but I'm not a good singer. Well, I wanted to join choir in Bible college just because it was fun. You got to go out on some weekends, and it was miserable. One, because I was not good at it, but I'm showing up to all these practices and I'm doing all this stuff, and that's not my strength. And so I'm not only wasting time, I'm depleting myself being involved in something that I'm weak in.
So and it's then energy.
It's energy, yeah. And so then I had to go to my strength.
Emotions.
Exactly. Because I'm sitting there in a practice an hour and a half, knowing I can't sing, or I'm operating in a weakness. That's a metaphor. But, if you know that you're introverted and you're always serving in guest services, maybe that's not the best place, or you're always being in front of people and you don't like being in front of people because you're operating in your weakness. That's going to drain you. It's going to deplete you. Whereas you can shine somewhere else, and you can be fulfilled and answer the call of God somewhere else in your strength. So, yeah, I wasn't happy in choir. One, because though I love music, I was operating in a weakness or a point where I wasn't good at. And so it's no longer fun.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you've already dabbled into this question, but I want to see if there's anything else you have here. And that's my next question for you was how does understanding yourself impact the way that you manage yourself? And obviously understanding what drains you, what takes energy away from you, and what feeds you energy is super important. Mm-hmm. That's really important to managing yourself. Anything else there?
Yeah, I would say definitely understanding yourself, but now how to manage it would be, what are you going to do knowing that you're missing something? It's not enough to just know the diagnosis, but what are you going to do to be able to mitigate that or to change that, so that when those high stress moments come, or when something's not right in the soil, how are you going to add back to that soil? And that really is all managing yourself. Let's take it to a relationship. If my wife and I were having a misunderstanding and we're not seeing eye to eye or getting on the same page, I can understand in myself, you know what? Maybe I said something and it hurt her, and I don't like that it hurt her. Or maybe she said something and I misunderstood it, and so it hurt my feelings. And so now we're not seeing eye to eye. Okay, now what? There's a misunderstanding. There's relational nutrients missing. There's a miscommunication. Do we just create this cycle, or do I say, okay, how do I manage myself? And so that's where you maybe go off to yourself and be able to look in the mirror. And the Word of God helps so much on this, being able to look in the mirror of the Word of God and say, okay, what can I do to change? What can I do to make a difference? And that might be asking for forgiveness. That might be asking for perspective. That might be calling somebody and getting encouragement. Now that's outside of marriage or something, but getting encouragement in the sense of, you're leading this ministry and you're doing your best, and you feel like nobody is appreciating it. Well, call somebody and allow them to appreciate it. One cool thing Brother Victor Jackson talked to me about is, he said, pride is wrong, but being truthful is not bad. But you have to know who to be truthful to. I think being able to brag, for lack of a better term, is a relational nutrient I think a lot of leaders don't allow themselves to express. So you need to have safe people that you can brag to. Man, I felt like I did really good preaching.
Would you really call it bragging, or would you call it just seeking affirmation? And
I would call it, seeking celebration, having someone to celebrate with you.
You do that publicly, and it's bragging.
Agreed. Yeah.
But you do that to somebody that maybe you would consider your life team, or somebody that is really close to you, that you receive these relational nutrients from.
Yep.
Then that is relationally filling for you, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that's a small example of getting that affirmation or encouragement. Because my soil needs it. I've poured myself into this ministry or this event or this person, and where is the relational nutrients? In those moments, being able to talk to somebody and go and manage that by calling someone and say, man, I felt like I did really good, and I need to hear that because I'm missing that. It's going to give me that energy, that emotional boost, that vitamin C to be pep and say, man, I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep going.
Well, when you do that, just from a counseling perspective, you don't go seek unhealthy affirmation. We all have insecurities. We all, whether people want to admit it or not, we need the relational nutrient of affirmation. Mm-hmm. We need validation. We need acceptance. And if we seek that healthily from people that are mentors or really close peers or our spouses or, safe places that we can seek those things, then we don't seek them unhealthily.
Agreed.
Where we're doing it in public places or with people that we're not close to, that we're not, transparent,
not a safe
and vulnerable
place.
with.
Yeah. And I want to pull a term you used just a few moments ago about life team. You really need to go to ryanfranklin.org and research that, look into that, because it is really important. It's a game changer. Jesus himself had a life team, people that you can rely on to help fill those relational nutrients. So you're not getting it from these unhealthy places. So I definitely agree. It matters who you're getting that from.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's make a switch here in emotional intelligence, and let's talk about understanding others. Let's take this from understanding ourselves, understanding the negative and positive emotions within us, how we regulate ourselves, which, by the way, we could go a lot more depth there, but we're gonna keep it shallow today.
Yeah.
Because I want to get into understanding others and the social intelligence and things of that nature. So explain a little bit about understanding others, if you don't mind.
So just like in diet, when, in youth ministry, you're serving different students, and this one can't have gluten, this one can't have dairy, this one can't have eggs. You have to change the menu based on the student when you're serving in the youth camp cafeteria. So the same is true for relational nutrients with other people. Different people need different things, and even different things at different times. So to be able to understand that matters so much. So let's take an example of like a mother where, she just had a kid and her life is just upside down. She's not sleeping good. Everything's topsy-turvy. What it does to that mother when the husband or one of the mother's friends or the pastor's wife tells her, you're doing a great job with that kid. That mother's just trying to survive. The kid's crying. The house is dirty. Dinner hasn't been cooked. It's just been miserable lately. But when somebody relationally gives to that person, understands that person is struggling, or they're missing that encouragement or that affirmation, or that person is angry, or they're starting to get bitter or cynical or whatever it is, they need a little bit more perspective. When you understand that in others, it helps you to be a better leader. Jesus related to his disciples very differently. How he related to John was different than how he related to Peter in different times, because he understood that everybody was a little different, and how he needed to relate to them and what they needed was different.
Gotcha. So understanding others and how that impacts our social intelligence. When we understand others, we're able to relate to people differently.
Yep.
I keep, as you were talking, my mind kept going back to Galatians 5 and the fruit of the Spirit. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about, love, joy, peace, patience, all of the self-control.
Yeah, long-suffering, meekness, kindness.
Against such, there is no law. I wasn't a Bible quizzer. I've got a very low memory, so I got to look the scriptures up. But I do know it's Galatians 5:22. So,
come on
now. But against such, there is no law.
Yeah.
Think about that from an emotional intelligence standpoint. When we're able to understand others and regulate that's fruit of the Spirit at its best.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, we have the Spirit of God living in us that helps us with that. But at the same time, I believe that the Lord can help educate us as well, and sort of train us to just naturally do a better job at giving that self-control, giving a self-controlled Ryan, and not an out of control Ryan, giving a Ryan that loves and is full of joy and peace, understanding others and what they need in the moment, and actually giving that to someone, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So with that said, how can someone use EQ to increase their resilience and their ability to manage stress?
So I would say to be able to be emotional intelligent and handle what God wants for you in your leadership is, one, you have to operate in your strengths rather than your weaknesses. That is so vital. If you're doing things you're not good at, or that depletes you, that drains you, you're never going to be fulfilled. You have to operate in your strengths. And then second is get relational nutrients from your life team. Once again, I know this is about emotional intelligence and social intelligence, and what do those terms mean, which, as you said, only really starting to get big in the last few years. But getting relational nutrients from your life team. I cannot tell you, Ryan, the amount of times my life team has helped keep me out of the ditch. I can even just affirm you in this moment. There's times when I've been stressful. I can remember exactly where I was. I do have that memory, as we just joked about a second ago. And I called you, and I was just frustrated in leadership, and I'm around people that I serve with, and I needed that encouragement and perspective. I felt like I wasn't doing a good job as a leader. And to be able to hear you affirm me and say, DJ, the way your mind thinks, and you're doing a good job, and different things that you said in those moments, that picked me up, and that helped me to be resilient, to bounce back. And so your life team is so very important, because you got to get those relational nutrients from other people. It's humbling. It's a little awkward, But when you do call your life team and say, you know what, I want to celebrate with you what God is doing, that helps you to keep going, because sometimes we can't see what we're going through or the impact we're making. And it takes somebody else to kind of affirm or kind of celebrate with you, if that makes sense. And then the last one I would say is kind of learn your derailers and mitigate those. So derailers is, once again, one of those unique terms we don't really use in emotional intelligence a lot, but when you're lacking something emotionally and relationally, those nutrients, what is your ditch, or what's the thing that you go to, or the attitudes you have in those? You need to know that. Are you hyper moody, that when you're lacking that affirmation or encouragement from the leader above you or next to you, when you're lacking perspective, or whatever that is that you're lacking emotionally and socially, relationally, do you get egotistical? Do you just hoard it to yourself? What are the bad negative traits, those landmines that we talked about earlier? And then you need to know where those are and make sure that you're avoiding those and that others are avoiding those. And once again, if you go back up, then you would avoid those by getting relational nutrients from your life team and making sure you're operating in your strengths.
Yeah, very good. Very good advice to those that are struggling with stress, which I think would we would all fall in that category, right?
Definitely.
If you're doing anything significant, if you're a leader of any kind, you're going to end up in stressful, tiring times in your life. And being able to understand those things that you just talked about, I'm not going to rehash that, but being able to understand your derailers, being able to understand your strengths and weaknesses, what's coming to the surface, being able to manage that is so vital, especially today, especially with the dynamics that we have today.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and even God, I want to give you one more point. Even God gave relational nutrients. When Samuel was mourning Saul, the anointing was snatched from King Saul. He sacrificed out of time and wasn't obeying God's ordinances, and he was worried about other people. The Bible says, how long will you mourn? There's somebody else that you can give to. You're still a great leader. I know the person that you anointed and the person that you gave to has failed, and you're lacking something now, but you're still a great leader. You're still going to be used mightily, Samuel. And, he picked himself up and obviously went and anointed David, which was one of the greatest kings of Israel. And we preached many, many messages from that. But even God realized that he himself needed something. We look at the prophet who was running from Jezebel, and he said, I'm all alone. I need something. And he said, there's other people just like you. Hang in there. You got this. You can keep doing this. So there's many times in the Bible where God gave this relational nutrients to people. Even Adam and Eve, after the mistake, God told Adam, who told you that you were naked? Who told you that something was wrong with you? You're still my child. I love you. There's going to be the consequences, but I'm here for you. And so many times when you look through that lens of emotional intelligence, you find that in the Word of God.
Yeah, I love the way that you said that there is maybe consequences, and yes, there may be consequences to our actions or somebody else's actions against us.
Yeah,
there may be consequences. Yet, as a life team member, somebody that I love and trust, that I am close to, I'm going to love you anyway.
Yeah,
regardless of what's going on in your life. And you may have blew it totally, but yet I'm still going to love you anyway. And that's what that team of people can do in your life.
Definitely,
is affirm you and help you mitigate those circumstances, in a lot better way, rather than me, for instance, spiraling for 2 or 3 days emotionally and feeling down and negative. I can come out of that quickly.
Yep.
In maybe a few hours rather than a few days.
Yep.
And that makes a difference when we're leading in this day and age. Being able to come out of our emotional junk in a quick and healthy way is super important.
It makes us better fathers, husbands, everything. Yeah,
exactly. I can have an emotional down circumstance, at church, as a pastor at POA. I can have an emotionally down circumstance, get what I need from a life team member, and then go home and be the dad that I need to be
Yeah.
in the evenings with my family and not bring that stuff home.
Agreed.
Whereas in the past, prior to that, I literally, it may be days that I'm, feeling the emotion of whatever those circumstances are, that lack of approval from somebody, or that whatever triggered me, it could send me spiraling for days.
Yep.
That doesn't happen anymore. And I'm so grateful for that. And a lot of it is based on what we're talking about here today, emotional intelligence.
And you got to be able to understand yourself and know, as that's the bottom line, is you have to be able to be honest with yourself.
Absolutely. So from a practical standpoint, and we don't have to get too deep in this, it's whatever you have off the top of your head. What are some practical ways that a person can increase their emotional intelligence?
Subscribe and follow Ryan Franklin on Instagram and podcast. Go to ryanfranklin.org. No, that's sincere.
I'll send you the check later.
Thank you. Yeah. No, that's sincere. That's where it started for me. And I've told you many times, and I make no bones about it. That changed my life, my friendship with you, and the content that God has given you to give out. But I would say read a book about it. People Fuel, John Townsend, Emotional Intelligence 2.0. I know that's the second version now. Start to have conversations with people so you can learn yourself, you can learn others, and then systematically do it, because what starts out as a system eventually becomes organic. It becomes cultural. What you say and do over and over again becomes culture. So start to put things in your life that you can start to learn how to understand yourself better and how to understand others better. And then it's going to become more and more natural for you. But at first it will be very awkward, but it's just like everything else in leadership. Once you get the hang of it, you'll be able to not go days on this emotional downswing, but it's a moment. You go home, you can be the great husband, the great father. Calais and Ira don't have to deal with it. Natalie doesn't have to deal with it. I can just call one of my life team members, text them. We can go through it, and then we can just move on, and I can keep being the leader God's called me to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just mention this. Daniel Goleman is one of the leading psychologists on emotional intelligence. He has got articles all over the web that are free. All you got to do is Google. All you got to do is Google emotional intelligence, and his name is going to come up. But Daniel Goleman, emotional intelligence, and you're going to find all kinds of really good articles that can help in this. I also want to bring out one question that you can ask a few people in your life, and that is, and this is a hard one, you got to put on your big boy pants to do this, but when I'm tired and stressed, what does it feel like to interact with me?
Yeah.
Ask your spouse that. Ask some of your close friends, your coworkers. Ask a variety of people in your life. Ask a family member. Whoever's going to be honest with you. And again, you got to put your big boy pants on, because you're not going to like what they have to say.
Yep.
But that is just a natural, cheap way of increasing your emotional intelligence to a great degree, understanding what it's like to be on the other side of me.
That's good.
It's a good question.
It's a very good question.
Yeah. So DJ, as we wrap up, I've got one final question I usually ask my guest, and it doesn't have to be related to emotional intelligence. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. What's one thing that you wish you could tell your younger self?
Man, that's two good questions back to back. I would say it changes in every season, but in this season of my life, I would say do the hard work earlier. Just like with finances, if you could save earlier to set yourself up better for success in the future, the same way. So get help earlier. It does deal with emotional intelligence, because I think emotional intelligence is in every aspect of life, but things that you struggled with as a child or others said to you, don't wait till high school and college to start to try to figure out that stuff. And then dig it out the soul, because that can take root and produce bad fruit. So, get help way sooner. I'm thankful for the mentors that I gained in college, but I wish I would have had a life team sooner. I wish I would have started having those deep friendships way sooner.
That's very good. And I would agree. That's one of the things that drives me to do some of the things that I do, the podcasting, the Christian Leader Blueprint, all of that, is I want to impact leaders' lives at an earlier age than mine was impacted.
Yeah.
I learned this stuff in my late 30s, and so it's what could my life have been like if I'd have learned it in my late 20s or my middle 20s?
Yep.
I would have loved to have learned some of these concepts, and like you said, a life team, emotional intelligence, some of these things I would have loved to have learned them earlier. So I love that advice. Go get a book, go get an article, something to help increase these types of topical knowledge within yourself. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, DJ, this has been a tremendous conversation. Thank you so much for giving me your time today. It's been such a pleasure to have you on. And if people want to connect with you in some way, where can they find you online?
They can follow me on Instagram at DJ Hill 706 for Columbus, Georgia, where I was raised, but DJ Hill 706 on Instagram. My wife is Nat Nicole Hill as well, so you can follow her. She's wonderful. She posts way more pictures of our family and everything else than I do, but that's where you can follow us.
Awesome. Well, I will be sure to put that in the show notes. Absolutely. So if you're a new listener, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to audio podcast or on YouTube. And also, it would just make my day if you would take a minute to rate the show and write a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen. My name is Ryan Franklin. Thank you so much for joining us on the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast.